The red sun of Kepler 44-b was setting behind the metal buildings when Dr. Hannah Kim heard the first scream. She was eating dinner in the colony cafeteria with the other workers when the sound cut through their conversations like a knife. Everyone stopped talking and looked toward the medical center. Hannah dropped her fork and ran outside. The screaming was coming from Building 7, where the miners lived with their families. She grabbed her medical bag from her small office and rushed toward the sound. Inside the building, she found Min-ho Park lying on the floor of his apartment. His wife Sujin was kneeling beside him, tears streaming down her face. Min-ho's skin was burning hot to the touch, and strange dark spots were spreading across his arms and chest. "When did this start?" Hannah asked, checking his pulse. It was racing like he had been running for hours. "An hour ago," Sujin whispered. "He came home from the mines, feeling tired. Then he started shaking and fell down." Hannah had never seen anything like it. She had been the colony's only doctor for 3 years, treating everything from broken bones to space flu. But this was different. This was something new and terrible. Within 2 hours, 5 more people were sick with the same symptoms. By morning, the number had grown to 20. Hannah worked through the night, but nothing she tried seemed to help. The medicine that worked for other diseases did nothing against this new sickness. Colony Administrator Daesung Lee called an emergency meeting in the main hall. The building was packed with worried faces. Miners, still covered in dust from their shifts, sat next to teachers and engineers. Everyone wanted answers that nobody had. "We need help from Earth, or the Galactic Council," Daesung announced. "Dr. Kim says this disease is unlike anything in her medical files." Hannah stood up to address the crowd. "The sickness spreads fast," she said simply. "We need special medicine and equipment that we don't have here. Our supply ship isn't due for 6 months. Old man Kyung-ho, who had been on Kepler 44-b since the first day of settlement, raised his hand. "What about the emergency beacon? Can't we call for help?" "I've been trying," Daesung replied. "I sent messages to Colonial Command, to our corporate sponsors, to anyone who will listen." By the end of the first week, 60 people were dead. The colony's small cemetery, which had only held a dozen graves before, now looked like a battlefield. Families were digging graves for their own children. Hannah barely slept. She moved between the sick like a ghost, knowing that everything she did was useless. The disease took people in the same way every time. First the fever, then the dark spots, then death within 3 days. Nothing stopped it. On the 8th day, the answer came from space. Daesung gathered everyone who was still healthy in the main hall. His face was white as paper when he read the message aloud. "By order of the Galactic Health Authority, System Kepler 442 is hereby declared a contaminated zone. No ships will be permitted to enter or leave. This quarantine will remain in effect indefinitely." The silence that followed was worse than screaming. Slowly, people began to understand what the message meant. No rescue ships, no medical supplies, no way home. "They're leaving us here to die," whispered Gina, a young teacher who had come to the colony just 2 years ago to start a new life. "What about the company?" someone shouted from the back. "We work for them. They have to help us." Daesung's voice cracked as he read the second message. "Stellar Mining Corporation regrets to inform all personnel that due to contamination risks, all operations on Kepler 442b are permanently terminated. All company assets are considered lost." The crowd erupted in angry voices, but Hannah wasn't listening. She was thinking about the pattern of the disease, about how it had started. The first cases had all been miners who worked in the deep tunnels. The new sections they had been digging for rare metals. That night, while the colony burned its dead, Hannah went to her small laboratory. She studied samples of blood and tissue under her microscope, looking for something she had missed. Hours passed before she found it. Hidden in the genetic structure of the disease were tiny markers that didn't belong. Artificial sequences that could only have been made by advanced technology. This wasn't a natural sickness that had been waiting in the ground. Someone had made this disease. Someone had put it where the miners would find it. Hannah sat back in her chair, the terrible truth washing over her. The corporate sponsors hadn't abandoned them because of bad luck. They had planned this. The rare metal deposits, the mining rights, the convenient quarantine. It all made sense now. 50,000 people had been sent to this world to die, so that someone else could claim what they had found. The galaxy hadn't forgotten about them. The galaxy had thrown them away like garbage. Outside her window, another funeral pyre burned in the night. But now Hannah knew they weren't just fighting a disease. They were fighting for their right to exist in a universe that had already decided they didn't matter. 3 weeks had passed since the quarantine message arrived, and the colony was falling apart. The power plant that provided electricity to all the buildings kept shutting down because half the engineers were dead. The water treatment center ran on emergency power, giving them just enough clean water to survive. Dae-sung Lee stood in the empty control room, staring at screens that showed red warning lights everywhere. The colony that had once housed 50,000 people now held fewer than 35,000. Every day, more bodies were carried to the burning grounds outside the settlement. "Sir, we have a problem," said Minho Choi, the head of colony security. He was a big man who had worked as a police officer on Earth before coming to Kepler for a better life. Now his job was keeping order while everyone around him died. "What now?" Dae-sung asked, not looking away from the screens. "The corporate security team is hoarding medical supplies. They've locked themselves in storage building C with enough medicine to treat 100 people." Dae-sung felt anger rise in his chest. The corporate security team consisted of 20 soldiers who had been left behind when the company abandoned the colony. Instead of helping, they were looking out for themselves. How many people do they have? 20 guards, plus some of their families. Maybe 30 people total. Minho adjusted his weapon belt. They're armed, and they've barricaded the building. Dr. Hannah Kim entered the control room, her medical coat stained with blood and sweat. She hadn't slept properly in days, and her hands shook from exhaustion. "I need those supplies," she said firmly. "Without them, we'll lose another 100 people this week." "The corporate guards won't negotiate," Minho replied. "Their leader, Captain June, says they're keeping the supplies for essential personnel only." "Essential personnel?" Hannah's voice rose with anger. "We're all going to die here. What makes them more essential than the children in the medical center?" Dae-sung made his decision quickly. "Minho, how many security officers do we still have?" 15 plus maybe. 20 volunteers with mining equipment we can use as weapons. "That's not enough to fight trained soldiers," Hannah protested. "It has to be enough," Dae-sung said. "Those supplies belong to everyone." The battle for storage building C happened. At dawn, Minho led his small team of colony security, while armed miners created a distraction at the back of the building. The corporate guards were better trained and had superior weapons, but they were outnumbered 3 to 1. The fighting lasted 2 hours. When it was over, Captain June and 5 of his men were dead. 3 colony defenders had also died, including a young miner named Tae-jun, who had volunteered to help because his daughter was sick. Hannah worked through the captured medical supplies like a woman possessed. There were antibiotics, pain medicine, and equipment that could help her treat the disease symptoms. But there still wasn't a cure. "This won't save us," she told Dae-sung as they sorted through boxes of medicine. "It will help people live longer, but the disease will still kill them." "Then we need to find a cure ourselves," he replied. "With what?" "My equipment is old and broken. I need a real laboratory with advanced computers and genetic sequencers." Dae-sung looked at her with tired eyes. "Then we'll build one." Over the next week, the surviving colonists worked together in a way they never had before. Engineers who were still healthy helped Hannah upgrade her medical equipment using parts from the mining machines. Computer technicians connected processing units together to create a more powerful analysis system. Jin-Wu, a geologist who had been studying the planet's minerals, brought Hannah soil samples from the deep mines where the disease had first appeared. Working 18 hours a day, she finally found the proof she needed. "Look at this," she said, showing Dae-sung the analysis on her improvised computer screen. "The genetic markers in the disease don't match anything natural on this planet. They don't match anything natural anywhere." Dae-sung stared at the data, trying to understand. "What does that mean?" "It means someone made this disease in a laboratory. Someone who knew exactly how to kill humans quickly and efficiently." Hannah pointed to specific sections of the genetic code. "These sequences can only be created using advanced bioweapons technology. But who would do this to us?" "Someone who wants our planet," she said simply. "Think about what we found in the deep mines last year. The rare earth metals worth more than the entire colony's budget. Someone decided it was easier to kill us all than buy us out." That night, Dae-sung sent a new message into space. Not a plea for help this time, but an accusation. He broadcast the genetic evidence of the bioweapon on all emergency frequencies, hoping someone in the galaxy would listen. "This is Colony Administrator Dae-sung Lee of New Horizon Colony," he said into the microphone. "We have been murdered by our own employers. The disease killing my people was created in a laboratory. We have proof. If anyone receives this message, please remember that we did not die from bad luck. We were killed for profit." No one answered. The galaxy remained silent, while 35,000 people fought for their lives on a world that had become their prison. But at least now they knew the truth about why they were dying. Sometimes, knowing the truth was the first step toward fighting back. Admiral Sun Wukong was drinking her morning coffee when she heard the desperate voice crackling through the old radio equipment. Her small office on Luna Station was quiet, filled with dusty books and pictures from her 40 years of military service. Most people thought she was just an old woman waiting to die. But Sun Wu still monitored the emergency frequencies every day. "This is Colony Administrator Dae-sung Lee of New Horizon Colony," the voice said through the static. "We have been murdered by our own employers. The disease killing my people was created in a laboratory. We have proof." Sun Wu sat up straight, nearly spilling her coffee. She turned up the volume and listened to every word of the transmission. When it ended, she played it again. Then a third time. The names in the message made her heart race. Lee Dae-sung, Kim Hannah, Park families. She remembered their parents and grandparents from the old days, when Earth had been a proud member of the galactic community, before the big corporations and alien governments had pushed humanity aside like unwanted children. She grabbed her personal communicator and called Captain Wu Jin Nam, her former second-in-command, who now worked at a shipping depot on Mars. He answered after several rings, sounding tired. "Admiral, it's 4 in the morning here. What's wrong?" "Jin, I need you to listen to something," she said, playing the recorded message. There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Finally, Wu Jin spoke. "Those are our people out there, 50,000 humans, abandoned to die," Sun Wu said. "The Galactic Council has quarantined the entire system. No one is allowed to help them. What can we do? Earth doesn't have the authority to challenge a council quarantine." Sun Wu stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. Once, that planet had sent explorers and diplomats across the galaxy. Now it was considered a backwater world, ignored by the great powers who made decisions for humanity. "Authority," she said. "Jin, when did we start caring about authority when our people are dying? The Earth Council will never approve military action. You know that." "Then we don't ask the Earth Council." Wu Jin was quiet again. "Admiral, that sounds like treason." "No," Sun Wu replied firmly. "That sounds like being human." She spent the next 3 days making secret calls to old friends across the solar system, retired military officers who remembered when Earth had a backbone, independent ship captains who still believed in helping their own people, engineers and doctors who were tired of watching humanity fade into irrelevance. The response surprised her. Within a week, she had commitments from 12 ship captains and over 300 volunteers. They came from Mars mining stations, asteroid belt colonies, and forgotten outposts at the edge of the solar system. People who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Dr. Janae Lim was the first scientist to volunteer. She ran a small research facility on Europa, studying alien diseases that Earth's government couldn't afford to research properly. When Sunwoo explained the situation on Kepler 44-b, Janae immediately began working on possible treatments. If they're right about the genetic markers, Janae said during their video call, this bioweapon was designed to kill humans specifically. But that also means I can design treatments that work on human biology. How long do you need? Give me 2 weeks and access to the colony's medical data. I can't promise a cure, but I can give them a fighting chance. The biggest problem was ships. Earth's official fleet was old and small, designed more for system patrol than deep space warfare. The volunteer vessels were even worse, cargo haulers, mining ships, and ancient military vessels that should have been scrapped decades ago. Commander Seo Jin O volunteered to lead the fighter escort. He had been flying combat missions since the border wars 20 years ago, before Earth's military had been reduced to almost nothing. His squadron consisted of 6 pilots flying ships that were older than some of their children. Admiral, I have to ask, Seo Jin said during their planning meeting. What happens when we reach Kepler 442b? The Council will send warships to stop us. Sunwoo looked around the table at the faces of people who had answered her call. Old soldiers, volunteer civilians, scientists who believed in something bigger than corporate profits. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, she said. But we're not turning back. The hardest part was keeping their plans secret. Earth's government would stop them if they knew what was happening. The corporations that controlled galactic trade would use their influence to block any rescue attempt. Even some humans would call them crazy for challenging powers that could destroy Earth itself. But late at night, when Sunwoo was alone in her office, she listened to Daesung's message again. She thought about the children dying on Kepler 442b, while politicians and business leaders decided their lives weren't worth the trouble of saving. 50 years ago, Earth had sent colony ships full of brave people to build new worlds for humanity. Now those same people were calling for help, and the galaxy was pretending not to hear. Sun-Woo opened her desk drawer and pulled out her old service medal from the border wars. It was tarnished and worn, but she could still read the words engraved on it, for those who serve others. Maybe Earth had lost its place among the great powers. Maybe humanity was no longer important in galactic politics. But some things mattered more than politics, or power, or profit. Some things mattered because they were right. The makeshift fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system, where no one would notice them. 12 ships that looked like they belonged in a scrapyard, rather than space combat. Admiral Sun Wukong stood on the bridge of the Taigok, an old cruiser that had been scheduled for demolition, before she convinced the shipyard workers to accidentally delay the scrapping order. Captain Wu Jin Nam brought his cargo hauler Seoul Express, which now carried medical supplies instead of trade goods. The ship's cargo bay had been converted into a mobile hospital, where Dr. Janae Lim worked on her experimental treatments for the bioweapon disease. Admiral, I have analyzed all the medical data from the colony, Janae reported over the communication system. Dr. Kim's work is brilliant. She figured out this was an artificial disease, with almost no equipment. My treatment should work, but we need to get there soon. How soon? Sunwoo asked. At their current death rate, they have maybe 2 weeks left. After that, there won't be enough people alive to maintain basic life support. The journey to Kepler 442b would take 10 days through hyperspace. But first, they had to cross territory, controlled by the Galactic Council and their corporate allies. Sunwoo had plotted a course through the least populated sectors, hoping to avoid detection as long as possible. On the third day, their luck ran out. Commander Siokajino was leading a patrol in his fighter when his sensors picked up 3 Council interceptor ships dropping out of hyperspace directly in their path. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Zelthor of the Galactic Council Patrol. Identify yourselves and state your destination. Sunwoo took a deep breath before responding. This is Admiral Sunwoo Kang of Earth Fleet. We are on a humanitarian mission to assist stranded civilians. Earth Fleet has no authority in this sector. You will turn back immediately or face the consequences. We respectfully decline, Captain. These are our people, and we're going to help them. The alien captain's voice turned cold. Then you have chosen to die for them. The battle was short but vicious. The council ships were faster and had better weapons, but Siokin's pilots knew how to fight dirty. They used the larger ships as cover, darting between them like angry insects, while the Taigok and 2 escort vessels engaged the interceptors directly. Woojin's cargo ship Seoul Express took a direct hit to its engine section. We're losing power, he reported. Medical bay is damaged, but Dr. Lim is still working. Can you make the jump to hyperspace? Sunwoo asked. Maybe, but we won't be able to keep up with the fleet. Sunwoo made a quick decision. Transfer Dr. Lim and her medical supplies to the Taigok. We'll leave the damaged ships behind. 2 of their vessels were too badly damaged to continue. Their crews transferred to the remaining ships, cramming people into spaces never meant to hold so many. The fleet that had started with 12 ships was now down to 8. They jumped into hyperspace just as council reinforcements arrived, but Sunwoo knew they wouldn't stay hidden for long. The council would be tracking them, and more ships would be waiting at their destination. Dr. Janae worked frantically in the Taiguk's improvised medical bay, surrounded by boxes of medicine and equipment salvaged from the damaged ships. The experimental treatment was complex, requiring precise timing and careful preparation. I need more time to test this properly, she told Sunwoo. If I'm wrong about the treatment, we could make the disease worse. We don't have time for more tests, Sunwoo replied. Those people are dying right now. Meanwhile, on Kepler 44-B, the situation was becoming desperate. Colony Administrator Dae-Sung Lee was receiving reports that their population had dropped below 20,000. Entire sections of the colony were empty now, their buildings dark and silent like tombs. Dr. Hannah Kim was working with equipment that failed more often than it worked. The makeshift laboratory that the colonists had built was falling apart, just like everything else on their dying world. We're losing the power plant tomorrow, Dae-Sung told her during one of their daily meetings. The last 2 engineers died this morning. How long do we have? Maybe a week of emergency power. After that, ... double quotes. He didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what happened when the power failed completely. No heat, no water purification, no medical equipment. The disease would finish what it had started. That night, Hannah stood outside the colony's main building, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the rest of humanity was living their lives while her people died alone on a forgotten world. She wondered if anyone even remembered they existed. Sunwoo's fleet dropped out of hyperspace. At the edge of the Kepler 442 system, 5 days later, immediately, their sensors detected a massive council battle group waiting for them. 15 warships, arranged in a defensive formation around the planet. Earth vessels. This is Fleet Admiral Young-Soo Park of the Galactic Council. You have violated quarantine orders and entered restricted space. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed. Sunwoo looked at her small fleet of damaged, outdated ships, facing an enemy force that could destroy them in minutes. Her crew was exhausted. Their supplies were running low, and they were millions of kilometers from home. but on the planet below, 20,000 humans were counting on them to do the impossible. "All ships," she announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember why we came here. Those people down there are our family, our responsibility, our honor. Today, we show the galaxy what it means to be human." The final battle was about to begin. The Earth fleet hung in space like a handful of metal scraps facing a wall of steel. 15 Council warships surrounded the planet Kepler-4 for to be in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Sun Wukong's 8 ships looked pitiful in comparison, but she had not come this far to surrender. "All ships, move to attack formation," she commanded. "Dr. Lim, are you ready?" "As ready as I can be," Janae replied from the medical bay. "But I need to get to the planet's surface to treat the colonists." Down on Kepler-4 for to be, Dr. Hannah Kim was watching her patients die one by one. The colony's population had dropped to fewer than 15,000 people. The power plant had failed that morning, leaving them with only emergency batteries that would last maybe 12 more hours. "Doctor, there are ships in orbit," called out Nurse Jinho Park, pointing to his communication device. "Someone's fighting. Up there." Hannah looked up through the medical center's cracked window at the flashes of light in the dark sky. "Who would come here? Everyone abandoned us." The battle began when Commander Seok Jin Oh led his 3 remaining fighters in a desperate attack on the Council fleet's left wing. His ancient ships were no match for the enemy's advanced weapons, but they created enough confusion for the larger Earth vessels to move closer to the planet. "Target their command ship," Sun Wu ordered. "If we can disrupt their coordination, we might have a chance." The Taigok and 2 escort ships concentrated their fire on Fleet Admiral Yongsu Park's flagship. The Council ship's shields absorbed most of the damage, but the attack forced them to break formation. Wu Jin brought the Soul Express down through the planet's atmosphere, while the other ships provided cover. The old cargo hauler was never designed for atmospheric flight, and it shook violently as it descended toward the colony. "I see the landing pad," Wu Jin reported. "But there are Council fighters following me down." "We'll handle them," Seo said, diving his fighter toward the pursuing enemy ships. His wingman followed, outnumbered 3 to 1, but determined to protect the medical mission. Dr. Janae and her medical team hit the ground running. They had prepared hundreds of doses of the experimental treatment during the journey, and every second counted. The first colonist they treated was a young girl who reminded Janae of her own daughter back on Earth. "Will this work?" Dr. Hannah Kim asked as they injected the treatment into patient after patient. "We'll know in 6 hours, Janae replied. "If their fever breaks and the dark spots start to fade, we've won." Above the planet, the space battle was going badly for Earth. 2 more ships had been destroyed, and the remaining vessels were running out of ammunition. Sun Wu watched her crew work desperately to keep their old ship fighting, knowing they couldn't last much longer. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Council fleet," her communications officer reported. Fleet Admiral Yongsu Park's face appeared on the screen, his expression cold and arrogant. "Earth fleet, you have fought bravely, but uselessly. Surrender now, and we will allow you to leave with your lives." "What about the colonists?" Sun Wu asked. "The quarantine stands. They cannot be allowed to spread their disease to other worlds." Sun Wu thought about the people down on the planet, families who had been sent to build a new world for humanity, only to be abandoned when corporate profits were threatened. Children who had never done anything wrong except be born in the wrong place at the wrong time. "No," she said simply. "Then you will die with them." The Council fleet moved into position to finish off the Earth ships and then destroy the colony from orbit. Sun Wu positioned her remaining vessels between the enemy and the planet, knowing it was hopeless but refusing to abandon the people they had come to save. "All frequencies, emergency broadcast," Sun Wu commanded. "This is Admiral Sun Wukong of Earth. The galaxy needs to hear the truth about what happened here." She began transmitting everything they had learned. the evidence that the disease was an artificial bioweapon, the names of the corporations involved in the murder of 50,000 innocent people, the proof that the Galactic Council had covered up genocide for profit. The broadcast went out on every communication channel, picked up by ships, space stations, and planets across dozens of star systems. For the first time in decades, the galaxy was listening to Earth. On hundreds of worlds, people stopped what they were doing to watch the small Earth fleet making its last stand. They saw Sun Wu's battered ships facing impossible odds to protect civilians that everyone else had written off as expendable. The Council fleet hesitated. Fleet Admiral Yongsu had expected a quick, clean operation that no one would remember. Instead, billions of beings across the galaxy were watching his every move. "Sir, we're receiving thousands of communications from across the galaxy," his aide reported. "Many governments are demanding we investigate the bioweapon claims." Down on the planet, the first patients began to recover. The experimental treatment was working. Dr. Hannah Kim watched in amazement as the dark spots on a child's skin began to fade and his fever finally broke. "It's working," Janae shouted. "The cure is working." Fleet Admiral Yongsu found himself trapped between duty and politics. Destroying the Earth fleet would make him look like a bully, but backing down would show weakness. Sun Wu made the choice easy for him. "Fleet Admiral, the disease has been cured. There is no longer any need for quarantine." The standoff lasted 3 more hours, while council politicians argued among themselves. Finally, they ordered Yongsu to withdraw. Earth had won, not through superior weapons or numbers, but by showing the galaxy what courage looked like.